This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life being connected. My mother was violated at the age of 18. This is where I received my education. With hard work, discipline, and courage, anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. The last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable and willing to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 6. This is where my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality, and abortion on demand. And finally, the unconstitutional and illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our legal and law-abiding citizens jobless. Enough is enough, and the political theater must stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, with 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Oklahoma is my home. This is where I was born and raised. It was here where I was given a chance at life being conceived after my mother was violated at the age of 16. This is where I received my education and learned with hard work, discipline, and courage anything was possible. But things have changed. This is not the Oklahoma I remember. Over the last several years, I've seen fear, chaos, and division tear this nation apart through the efforts of communists and the apathy of Republicans in name only, who are either incapable or unwilling to do whatever it takes to protect our God-given rights. Election fraud, open borders, riots, unvetted Afghan refugees, and 300,000 plus acres of land sold to Chinese nationals has made Oklahoma the hub for human trafficking, the indoctrination of our children in critical race theory, sexual immorality on demand, and finally, the illegal vaccine mandate, leaving hundreds of thousands of our lawlessness. Enough is enough, and the political theater stop. We must have a governor who's willing to lead legislators and Oklahomans to fight back against this tyranny and aggressively address these issues head-on. As the next governor of the state of Oklahoma, I will, in the first 100 days, initiate a forensic audit with canvases to ensure election integrity, secure Oklahoma's borders, stop all state funding to school districts who train or teach CRT to faculty, staff, or students, and end all abortions. Oklahoma, let's put our faith back in God, believe that nothing is impossible, and make Oklahoma free again. Town Hall. I'm your host, Dr. Mark Sherwood, your 2022 gubernatorial candidate from Oklahoma. We are fast approaching the election, 9 days away to the primary on June 28th. That's the day that will see a shock to the world, where the grassroots people stood up and really stood out and showed up, and we will see a change begin to take place. We need to have a changing of the guard because we've had no guard. We need to have a changing of persons in front because no one's been in front. We need to change from people that stand back and step back to people that stand up and step forward. We need to begin to replace people that run away from danger and really put people in places that run towards danger. In other words, we need Davids. We don't need cowards. I'm serious about that, folks. We're living in a time where we're losing our freedoms inch by inch, slice by slice, and we're not doing much about it. But people like you and people like me and the good, hard-working people of Oklahoma and even people around the country seeing this live stream today, I know you're sick of it. And I know that you're part of the solution because you said yes to the call, just like my wife and I did, and it has not been easy. I was telling our guests just before we went live that the last couple months we've driven about 10,000 miles around this state and around this. We've been in every corner of the state, from throwing, cow pies in western Oklahoma in the World Cow Chip Throwing Championships to watching my wife feed little baby lambs in southeastern Oklahoma. But along the way, we met some precious dear people. We just returned today from Eufaula, Oklahoma, where I got to speak at a wonderful church called At the Cross. Pastors John and Annalie Brindley. If you're down that area, you got to go check them out. And if you're in that area, you need to vote for Angie Brindley because she's running for House representative down there. So that's important. And just yesterday, we were down in the town of we're in McIntosh County, down in the Stigler area, and we were also in Creek County. The day before, we were down in Stigler again. So it's been a journey. Tomorrow night, we'll be in Logan County, which is just right to the north of Oklahoma City area. So we can't wait to be down there with you then. And then Tuesday night, we've got another town hall like this with Attorney Thomas Renz. You don't want to miss that one. That's absolutely incredible. That guy is brilliant, and he has taken up the war charge against the medical tyranny that is. And as you know, my wife and I, we've been battling medical tyranny for not just during the pandemic, for the last 10 years. We've stepped up against a system that says you're going to do it our way. And our question was twofold. Remember, why is one question, and why do we have to listen to you is the second question? Because what we're doing is not working. Even in medicine, people keep getting sicker and sicker. That ought to tell you something. Something's wrong. The United States government has failed America regarding their health. We pay more per capita for our health insurance. It's not health insurance at all. And we get less in return. We're down at the bottom of industrialized nations in our health. We're pitiful. In Oklahoma, we're near the bottom too, I think number 49. Folks, we've got a major dysfunctional problem. We have abdicated our responsibilities for health, and we transferred them over to people that have no business caring for our health. We become slaves to big pharma. I like to say slaves to pharmakia. We need to get out of that business, out of that mess, and begin to understand there are ways to bring healing to the body that might include medicine, but certainly lifestyle is every bit of it too. We've been fighting against that, and we put our lives on hold to bring healing, not just into people's lives, but now healing into the state of Oklahoma. All of you have been affected by this idea of medical tyranny. All of you have been affected by these leaders in charge, including our own governor of our own state, who frankly does not know the United States Constitution, as evidenced by the inability or lack of courage to step up against these mandates that never should have happened. Folks, under my administration, we would have never had mandates one day. You would have not had to wear a mask to go into business. You would have not had to take a vaccine in order to hold a job or seek medical care or education. What kind of a world have we came to when the government's trying to control your health decisions? That's not a world I want to live in. So we want to change that world, one person, one day at a time. And it starts right here in Oklahoma. Folks, when I look at what's happened in our world and the lack of awareness of the United States Constitution, we're seeing it quickly eroded away, and now the Second Amendment's being attacked. Attacked in such an aggressive way that we need to be prepared to hang on to our arms under all circumstances. And we see a complete unawareness of the 10th Amendment. We hear government talking about all these gun laws and all this thing they're going to do with health. Stop. It is completely irrelevant to the states. Hear my heart with this. The states and the people of those states, as per the 10th Amendment, they maintain and hold those powers and rights over and above the federal government unless they give them up. And we haven't given those up. And we're not going to give those up. So understand that all this talk you're seeing on the news about the red flag laws and all that, I get it. It might seem like conjecture and it might seem like something they're trying to do for the good of the nation, but each individual state has the ability to accept any part of that they want or none of it at all, because the states hold the power. Consequently, as well, with the federal government, they had no business telling the states what to do with their health. The states could have always pushed back, and they should, and they will, and we will. Under our administration, we will stand up for the state sovereignty, stand up well against federal overreach, because that's what we've been experiencing. And frankly, if the WHO or any of those other three-letter words come to Oklahoma, I'm going to say with the question, who do you think you are? If you don't get permission, get out, because you have no jurisdiction here. And that, my friends, is the United States Constitution. The states formed the federal government. The federal government did not form the states. The federal government used to be referred to as the little general government because it was so tiny. You look at Article 1, Section 8 of the United States Constitution. Congress's powers are laid out there. I encourage you to read that. Article 1, Section 8. There's 18, not 180, and not 1,800 like they would have you believe. But there's 18, and they're narrow. They're very specific. So read those things sometime. You're going to see that all this stuff they're talking about is not even their job. It's not in their place. It's like hiring a plumber to come to your house that knows how to work on a pipe below your sink. And all of a sudden they try to get into repairing your furniture and your roof. They're not qualified. And that's what the federal government has become. They're doing things they're not qualified to do because we, the people, and we, the states, have always been qualified to do those jobs. So don't abdicate your responsibility. Folks, I want to update you again on our app and our website, Sherwood2022.com is our website. Sherwood2022 is our app. You need to get on there and find out what's happening. I've given you some highlights of where we'll be the next couple of days. And really understand we'll be all over the place. I believe Wednesday night we'll be in Pryor, Thursday night in Ardmore, Oklahoma. Friday night, I believe we'll be down south in Wilburton, Oklahoma. So we're going to be crisscrossing the state in this last week, and we need your help. Please, seriously, keep us in your prayers every day, because we are not in this for ourselves. We're not doing this to be served. We're doing this to serve. We're doing this to give, not to take. Folks, we don't need this job. We're doing this job because it needs to be done. It's a duty and an honor to serve you, my fellow Oklahomans, and we will do so with honor and dignity. We will turn Oklahoma into a state that the whole world looks at with admiration, wondering how do they do that? It's because of you, the people of Oklahoma. You wanted your voice to be heard, and it will be heard finally. And the legislatures will echo that voice. They will pass the right laws, and we will execute those laws with an excellence and a vigor that is unsurpassed. Folks, we look forward to serving you as your next governor. With that said, I want to introduce our guest tonight. I met this man, oh gosh, more than a year ago now, and we immediately connected. I mean, it was just like not just a colleague-to-colleague connection, but we connected as men. We connected as friends. And by the way, happy Father's Day if I didn't mention that, because like you fathers, men, thank you for what you do. do more. I want you to do more. Step up as men and step up as fathers, because lack of manhood and lack of fatherhood is the key to the loss of our country. But the key to the gain or the retainment of our republic is manhood and fatherhood. Step up and be those men. Men, will you? That said, back to our introduction, I met Dr. Bartlett a year or two ago, and we've just connected. We became instant friends. He and I just have a terrific relationship. Without further ado, welcome, Dr. Bartlett. Thanks for being my friend, first of all. Glad you're here.
It's an honor to be with you, Mark. You know, I'm an ER doctor down in Texas, and Mark Sherwood is a good name down in Texas, all across the country. Let me tell you, it says in Proverbs in the Bible that a good name is a gift from the Lord, and Mark Sherwood is a good name. And so you've mentioned leadership on a state level with governors. You've mentioned healthcare. I know something about both of those. I was a advisor to the Texas governor, Rick Perry, for 7 years on a task force. And I was told to give the lieutenant governor and speaker of the House, advice so that every Texan would have access to quality health care. And it was a 2-year appointment. After 2 years, he asked me, would you stay one more year? And I did. And after that year, again, he asked to stay for a total of 7. We accomplished a lot. And at the end of that, the state commissioner of Health and Human Services gave me the Meritorious Service Award because of the work we had done, volunteering. It was on my own dime that I was constantly flying down to Austin. And so I'm familiar with giving advice. I'm familiar with people who are wise leaders. I was a counselor for the Texas Medical Association, which has over 65,000 doctors as members, and I was a counselor on the board of counselors. I'm an ER doctor. I practice on the front lines. And so, Mark, you and I met when we were talking about how everything got off the rails January 1, 2020. The American healthcare system got off the rails. Everything started to implode. It was a systematic, purposeful, slow train wreck that we were seeing happening to the American people. And that provoked you. It provoked me. And so I was working in the emergency room at the beginning of the pandemic, Mark. I was doing a 48-hour shift. And during that 48-hour shift, I was praying, Lord, what do I do if someone comes in here with COVID? Because we've been told by Fauci, the CDC, the FDA, the WHO, there's nothing we can do. Everybody's supposed to hide in place, shelter in place, hide in place, and tough it out with Tylenol. Late care only is that was their only strategy. And the state health departments repeated that, blindly following that, where people were blindly following that advice off a cliff. But you and I said, that's not good enough. And so I was praying during that 48-hour shift, Lord, what do I do? And while I was asleep, the Lord gave me a winning strategy of using budesonide, an inhaled steroid, clarithromycin, aspirin, and it was working. So we had people living that should have died according to the CDC and the World Health Organization. And immediately I was getting calls by governors, lieutenant governors. I went to Texas, met with the lieutenant governor, to Tennessee, met with the governor there. And then I came to Oklahoma and I talked to the lieutenant governor of Oklahoma. He was excited. And so where's your governor? Well, he's bear hunting down in southeast Oklahoma. He knew I was coming with a solution that could have saved Oklahoma citizens' lives. Where is he? I went to his church that night. He wasn't there. He knew I was coming with a solution. You know what? I found out he was bear hunting down there. While people were dying in Oklahoma of COVID, he was bear hunting. Mark, I told his brother in that church that night, if I got to put on a bear suit and I got to go down there to southeast Oklahoma while he's bear hunting to get a hold of him and tell him something that could save a person's life in Oklahoma, I'll wear a bear suit. On the way back to the airport, I got a call where he met with me over the phone as I was going back to the airport. And when I was telling him the facts, I kept hearing him say one phrase, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. I didn't know that, which prompted me to realize either his advisors did not know it or they weren't telling him. And it does matter what advisors you surround yourself with, but what kind of leadership is out bear hunting while people are dying, while your people are dying? That's the experience that I had in Oklahoma. I had others that were eager to hear something that was useful, practical, and because they cared for their people. But Oklahoma, it's time for a change. And I can tell you, Mark Sherwood is a man of character and integrity. He is a man. And Mark, were you on a SWAT team?
Yes, sir.
You have had a lifestyle of putting your life on the line for others that were strangers. You were willing, you have made that decision day after day, month after month, year after year to seek other people's best interests, even if they're strangers, because you trust in God to protect you. And you're willing to sacrifice for others. That's the kind of leader we need. And so, let's talk about what's happening these days. We just had a pandemic. Did I say pandemic?
You did.
Maybe a pandemic, and maybe there's future pandemics coming. And so I'm going to reveal those to your viewers right now, because we need a leader who will not be bear hunting during the next pandemic where families are bankrupted, their small businesses are bankrupted and shuttered by a World Health Organization, by people who have failed us over and over. And I'll tell you a recent failure, it's glaring. The CDC at their website for monkeypox said you need to wear a mask. And they were that on June 6th, they said you have to wear a mask. It's not a respiratory virus.
No.
They had so much pushback from everybody, probably the 6th grade biology students, the 6th grade science kids that were making projects probably were calling the CDC. On June 7th, they took it down from their website. Let me just say there's no science behind that decision to wear a mask, to promote a mask, to demand a mask, because they're a health authority. Well, that's another example of failure to follow the science, failure to use common sense. That was just, and how much does a mask cost when you buy masks for a whole state? And who profits from that? It was nonsense. It was non-science. That's just a latest example. We've all seen Anthony Fauci's montage of saying that with COVID, you shouldn't wear a mask, and then maybe wear a mask, and then wear 2 masks. And then if you get a shot, you don't have to wear a mask. We've seen his leadership style.
But she said
we need the leadership style of Mark Sherwood. Mark, I sent some videos over to you just to show what's going on. Let's look at one of those videos.
But she's had the flu for 14 days. Should she get a flu shot?
Well, no. If she got the flu for 14 days, she's as protected as anybody can be, because the best vaccination is to get infected yourself.
And so she should not get it?
If she really has the flu, she definitely doesn't need a flu vaccine. If she really has the flu.
She should not get it again?
No, she doesn't need it, because it's the most potent vaccination is getting infected yourself.
The most potent vaccination is to get the infection yourself. That was 10 or 12 years ago, Anthony Fauci. But do you remember Senator Rand Paul, Dr. Rand Paul, on the Senate floor telling the leaders of the healthcare systems that I already got COVID? Why are you saying I should get a shot? What's the matter with natural immunity? And they dodged his questions. They never answered directly, because he was asking a valid question, natural immunity. And yet they were pushing a COVID shot that has been proven not to keep you out of the hospital, that has been proven that if you get it, you still can die.
Yeah.
It's been proven that that you could get disability if you get it. You can go to the CDC website and see that 28,000 plus have died from it. So why would you take the risk of dying if you've already got natural immunity? Anthony Fauci just said the best vaccination is to get the disease yourself. And if you've already had it, you've got the best vaccination. Why would you settle for less and take a risk? And I'm going to tell you, I'm on the nonprofit organization, Mark, that sued the FDA for the Pfizer safety and effectiveness data of the Pfizer shot.
Right.
And so the FDA, when they knew that they were sued with the Freedom of Information Act lawsuit, they pushed back. And they said, we need 75 years before we're going to let that information go out to doctors and to American citizens. And so I was sitting in the courtroom in Fort Worth on January 22nd this year when the federal judge, Mark Pittman, pushed back and he said, no, I said, you need to release that information because doctors need to be able to tell the risk and the benefit of this shot. And how are they going to be able to give that information if they don't have it? So you can't hide it from them any longer. Well, Mark, when we got that information, no wonder they were trying to hide it. It had over 1,200 outcomes, bad outcomes, including in the middle of it, Mark, it had Kaposi sarcoma, AIDS cancer. And so I'm letting your listeners know, why would we force that risk on somebody who's already got natural immunity? So everything needs true leadership. You're a real leader, Mark. And so that's my comment on Anthony Fauci and natural immunity. Let's watch that second clip.
Yeah.
My friends, welcome. Yesterday, I posted my report detailing the Gates Foundation's funding of gain-of-function research into H5N1, attempting to get it to cross over into humans. And I asked the question, is bird flu going to be the next pandemic? What I didn't realize was that just last week, former CDC Director Robert Redfield answered my question.
Yeah, I think we have to recognize, I've always said that I think the COVID pandemic was a wake-up call. I don't believe it's the great pandemic. I believe the great pandemic is still in the future, and that's going to be a bird flu pandemic for man. It's going to have significant mortality in the 10 to 50% range. It's going to be trouble, and we should get prepared for it. I do believe that the pandemic risk is a greater risk of the national security of the United States than Korea, China, Russia, Iran. And we ought to start investing proportional to that national security risk so we're prepared.
Wow. So the former CDC director, who, for the record, was very much involved in and entirely aligned with Dr. Fauci on the response to COVID-19.
They just told us about another pandemic.
Yep.
You know and I know. You know, and I know when they say a mortality rate of 10 to 50% in English, that means that 1 out of 10 people will die or 1 out of every 2 people will die.
Yep.
And so if he knows that and he's telling us that that's what he expects, and he also talked about gain of function research where they were juicing up bird flu in a lab to make it more contagious. And then they posted that information out on the internet. Why is the FBI and the CIA and everybody not investigating them is what I want to know. We need real leaders like Mark Sherwood, where there can be a refuge for the people in Oklahoma. We need someone who will stand up for the welfare of others, like a SWAT man, like a SWAT officer going and putting himself in harm's way to protect other people.
Yeah, and I'll point out this. You know, you mentioned something about, talking to Governor Stitt over the phone. Unequivocally, let's understand, folks in Oklahoma, that Richard Bartlett's strategy of using budesonide was not adhered to in this state. It was not. It was refused. I can tell you from personal experience, the hospitals in Oklahoma refused to do that and said it doesn't work. And this is where we get. This is what happens when we have zero leadership. It could have changed.
Mark, he was leading a bear hunt. Mark, while people were dying in Tulsa Hospital, he was out hunting bears. Hey, while people were dying in the hospital in Oklahoma City, where was he? Hunting bears.
Yeah, and interestingly enough, a lot of people don't know this, and I want to put this out there right now, is during the time of while he's bear hunting, he actually used state money to obtain some mask that we never received. And so now there's $5 million spent with no PPE received at all. What kind of a nonsensical decision is that? You never pay for goods until you get them. I mean, that doesn't make sense. And so more bad decisions. So go ahead with that thought process. And by the way, I hope people understand the gain of function. You know, that means that in research lab, there is no ability for this virus to function in humans. But we did that. We engineered that and arranged that so that that virus would gain a function of being able to replicate in humans. Crazy, but we did that. Why are we doing that? Pandemic round 2.
Yes, it's basically making a weapon, making a bioweapon. Senator Rand Paul, who I've talked to quite a bit about this, we're on the same page, says they're juicing up the virus. It's juicing up the virus, basically making it a bioweapon, dangerous to humans, making it where it can spread from human to human easily and from bird to human. Why would we even be spending taxpayer money to do that? We need a real leader in Oklahoma, Mark Sherwood. And so I'm going to say the malfeasance, buying stuff and not receiving it for using the taxpayer money to buy stuff and then not getting it. I don't know. What do you call that? I'm just going to say it's not a good thing. But let's go to the next clip here.
And for us, therefore, we're really taking that leap, us as a company buyer, in cell and gene therapy, which to me is one of these examples where really we're going to make a difference, hopefully, moving forward. There's some, ultimately, the mRNA vaccines are an example for that cell and gene therapy. I always like to say, if we had surveyed 2 years ago in the public, would you be willing to take gene or cell therapy and inject it into your body, we would have probably had a 95% refusal rate. I think this pandemic has also opened many people's eyes to innovation in a way that was maybe not possible before.
Hey, Mark, what do you think of that? They said that it was, this is the president of Bayer Pharmaceutical talking to all his peeps, all the other big pharma CEOs at the World Health Summit just 6 months ago, saying 2 years ago, if we would have acknowledged and told the truth that this was gene therapy, these shots that we're calling vaccines, we would have had 95% of the people refuse to take a shot for gene therapy and inject it in their body. So the deception, I'm going to call it out.
Yes.
When you don't acknowledge and don't call it gene therapy, except in your secret meetings at the World Health Summit 2 years later, that's bad leadership, in my opinion. And I'm saying that was the president of a major pharmaceutical company, Big Pharma, talking to the other Big Pharma leaders and the government leaders. And I'm saying we need a different kind of leadership in Oklahoma. Mark Sherwood.
Yeah, I look at that, and I'll tell you just unequivocally again, folks, when you start messing with genes, let's just be reasonable. We live in the Bible Belt. Most people have heard of God, and some people hopefully know him. But the bottom line is we are constructed by the hand of God with these genes that are knit together. And the genes are basically recipes that God put in us to make proteins and enzymes for life, for function, right? When you start messing with the creation, you're actually taking the place of God. In other words, you are subverting God by changing his perfect arrangements for you, and you're allowing Big Pharma to do that. And let us really understand, not to freak you out, but I want you to catch this. If you look at Big Pharma, the Greek pharmakia is found in Galatians 5:20 under the term witchcraft and sorcery. So when you transfer the responsibility of health care over to pharmakia to allow gene therapy to change your genes, you're actually turning over your worship, your God, to them. And not to get all weird there, folks, but this is a big deal, and we must not ever bow down to that ever again. And I find it interesting, that tape, 95% 2 years ago would have said no, but we've had a lot of propaganda that's been bombarding the airways because Big Pharma owns the airways, and frankly, they own politicians too, don't they?
Mark, there's been a lot of bullying, a lot of coercing Get the shot. I'm losing my patience, Biden said. I'm losing my patience. We've had people say, just roll up your sleeve, and start cussing. We've heard people say, if you don't get the shot, if you just don't comply, now that we know that it's gene therapy, according to this guy's acknowledging it in front of the whole world now, gene therapy. And he's saying, if you don't get the shot, you'll lose your job. People have been fired. Let me tell you, I work as an ER doctor, Mark. And so I've had patients. I remember the 62-year-old lady who came in as my patient in the ER, who was feeling great, was in good health, got the shot at a chain pharmacy, hit the floor immediately. The pharmacist shrieked and said, I wish I wouldn't have given you the shot. She's my patient 2 hours later in the ER. She can't feel anything on the left side of her body. She can't move her left arm. She has motor deficit, neuro deficit. She has had a stroke. I have seen disaster after disaster immediately after these shots. And it's not just me. 28,000 deaths are at the CDC website, reported at the CDC website. And many people think that's underreported. But the bottom line is this is not benign. And so we need leaders who will stand up for the Oklahoma workers who say, you know what, I want to work hard. I want to take care of my family. I want to pay my bills. I don't mind working long hours, but I don't want to take an experimental medicine or shot that has no long-term safety data, especially 2 years later when we see 28,000 deaths and over 1 million people seriously injured that are reported at the CDC website. And now you hear the big pharma CEOs calling it gene therapy instead of a vaccine. I'm just saying, why don't we have a leader that'll stand up for the people in Oklahoma? We need Mark Sherwood.
Make sure, folks, I'm monitoring the feed right here on Facebook Live. And as you have questions, populate them through and share this video right now. Share it because you care. And I know you care deeply about people. You need to share this thing in a record manner. Share it to 10 people and encourage them to share it with someone else. And let's make sure the whole world hears this message. And as you have questions, go ahead and populate those, because here in about 12, 13, 14 minutes, I will begin to open it up for questions, and I will feed those questions for Dr. Bartlett. So if you have questions, keep those coming. But please share this video. It's critically important, this information. I want to ask you a question, because I think the big question, I think people are looking for the answers, but I mean, we both know the answer, but I want to hear it from you. This gain of function, pandemic, what is the ultimate reason, in the opinion of Dr. Richard Bartlett?
One of the videos that I was going to send is a clip of Anthony Fauci recently talking about the masks and the masks on the planes. And when that got shot down in federal court in Florida, Biden pushed back. He was angry that he's got the Department of Justice trying to push back on that because the federal judge said, you guys did this illegally. You didn't follow the rules. And you know what? When the masks were taken down from the planes, did we start seeing the hospitals overwhelmed? Did we see mass chaos? Did we see planes falling out of the sky? No. We saw the manipulation was shut down, and we saw some people that call themselves leaders that were very angry that they were no longer able to control us. And so there's a clip of Anthony Fauci being asked that on the mainstream media about the masks and what's the problem with it being shut down, the masks being stopped. And he says, well, it's really not so much about the masks and about the results of the mask, basically, whether it would protect you or not. It's more about who's in charge of making these decisions, who's in control.
Yeah.
Oh, really? I thought we were wearing masks because we were supposed to protect everybody. I'll tell you what, I'm going to say right now, a big thank you to those last stragglers who are still wearing a mask in their cars by themselves to protect me and my family. I'm just going to say that the masks are made for surgery. They're made for when you're dealing with bacteria, and there is overwhelming evidence. Bottom line, people need their freedom. If something's going to be decreed, if there's going to be a mandate, if there's going to be a dictate, it better have science to back it up. And we have never heard good science behind a lot of these things. We've just heard do it because we say so. Well, that is not good enough. And they have proven their true colors. They have shown their true colors when they say you have to wear a mask for a non-respiratory virus called monkeypox, and then they get so much pushback that they take it down from the website 2 days later. They've shown their true colors when they say, Anthony Fauci saying, wear a mask, don't wear a mask, wear 2 masks, if you get the shot, you don't need to wear a mask. If you get the shot, you have to wear a mask. With that chaos, without any science behind it.
Yeah.
Let me just say the budesonide strategy God gave me as an answer to prayer. Oxford University confirmed that 90% of hospitalizations and ER visits and urgent care visits would have been prevented with that one medicine, budesonide, by itself used early against COVID. Have you ever heard that from the governor of Oklahoma or the lieutenant governor or the health department leader?
I have not. As a matter of fact, I have heard just the opposite. And I know these people, and I'm telling you folks right now, in Oklahoma, they have already, hear me, ordered the COVID shots for those children under 5. The only state that didn't do that was the state of Florida. We did that, and it's not okay. We would have never done that under our administration. Richard, when we look at this, what's going on, you were mentioning before we went live that you believe you have strategies to address this right now head on in a proactive, prehabilitative way. Talk about those.
We were all caught flat-footed, taking care of our families, taking care of patients, doing normal life. Life is busy for everyone. Who would have thought? I didn't see this coming, that they would start doing things that made no sense, that were bad medicine. In Odessa, Texas, they were putting plastic equipment covers over people's heads in the ER as soon as they tested positive for COVID. Many times, if you look at the picture that's on the internet, people didn't have oxygen on underneath the bag and they were already low on oxygen when they came in. We have seen so much bad medicine, so much anti-science, bad, no science to back it up, forced, mandated, decreed by dictators. We've seen medical tyranny. And I didn't see it coming, but I'll tell you, we see what the next pandemics are. They've told us what they are. We've heard Bill Gates say, well, there's going to be, there's smallpox, there's going to be a weaponized influenza, there's going to be hemorrhagic fever like Ebola or Marburg. He said those 3. We've heard this Redfield clip that we just showed saying it's going to be a weaponized bird flu that can kill 50%. He said 10 to 50%. 50% of the people dying. That means 50% might live, but they might be disabled. So what's coming, they've already told us. And they're the result of gain-of-function research, basically making bioweapons. Chemical weapons are real. Nuclear weapons are real. Conventional weapons and tanks and machine guns are real. I just watched the Top Gun Maverick movie. Jets are real, but, bioweapons are real too. And so we need a leader who will stand in the gap, who will protect the good people in Oklahoma. I got a personal interest in Oklahoma. You're our neighbors. Yeah. In the church service I was in this morning, they talked about the book of Obadiah, 1-chapter book, talking about, this guy didn't take care of his brothers. As a matter of fact, he watched his brother and their people get treated bad, robbed and killed, and he didn't do anything. And then he actually helped. That's what the book of Obadiah is about. I'm saying this brother cares about his brothers and sisters in Oklahoma. Yeah. And my mother and father-in-law in Hobart, Oklahoma, when they were there. I went to Hobart a lot. We got relatives in Hobart, Oklahoma. We got relatives in Henrietta. I know every square inch of the highway from West Texas to Henrietta, Oklahoma, in the middle of, right outside of Wheelitka, actually out in the country. And so I understand Oklahoma. There's good people in Oklahoma, and they need a leader who has courage, like Mark Sherwood. They need a leader who will think like Mark Sherwood, who doesn't just follow blindly, who isn't manipulated, who isn't bought off, who isn't going to go and delegate important decisions to someone else while he goes bear hunting, who isn't going to ignore science like Oxford University, the oldest university in the English-speaking world, since 1096 with 72 Nobel Prize laureates. And they did the Stoic trial and the Principle trial, 2 randomized controlled trials. That's called science. And when Anthony Fauci says budesonide is just a placebo, and Oxford proves that 90% of the hospitalizations shouldn't have happened, 90% of the ER visits shouldn't have happened, where was everybody dying? They were dying in the hospital. Does that mean 90% of the people that died in Oklahoma shouldn't have died? Mark, I've had people from different tribes. I've had tribes from all over the United States calling me on my cell phone because the Native Americans in this country suffered more than any other ethnicity. And that breaks my heart. It shouldn't have been. But you know what? Many of them started using budesonide and that stopped the plague. So, you know, there's many Native Americans, which is a wonderful heritage in Oklahoma. They need to know that Mark Sherwood will stand up for them. When we had Native Americans in Oklahoma dying from this pandemic, which Redfield, Dr. Redfield, the CDC director, former CDC director, calls COVID a wake-up call, that's offensive. For the people that lost their mom, their dad, their brother, their sister, their husband, their wife, to call it a wake-up call, how patronizing, how condescending, how insensitive. We need a leader like Mark Sherwood who will stand up for the people of Oklahoma. Enough said. You've been caring about people's health and well-being as a career, but even as a SWAT, a member of SWAT, an elite police force, used to go out there and put yourself in harm's way against the thugs, the drug dealers, the human traffickers, the worst of the worst, the kidnappers, the murderers. That's what SWAT is sent after. Yeah. When you were a SWAT guy, that's what they were for. Mm-hmm. And Mark, I appreciate your service, and I am very hopeful for the good people of Oklahoma that they'll have a true leader, Mark Sherwood.
Well, I appreciate your kind words, and most of all, I appreciate your friendship. And I tell you what, folks, Richard's right. We, for the most part, have not listened to good, sound advice. We've ignored true science. We've leaned towards what I call political science. This is where we get a big mess. And I can assure you this, under our administration, we will surround ourselves with men such as this that give advice in this way, and we will not follow the narrative. We will not follow the CDC guidelines with this idea that they know what they're talking about, because they don't. They've already showed their hand. They've told you what they're going to do. You heard Fauci, you heard Redfield, you heard the big pharmaceutical head talking to other pharmaceutical companies. The cat is out of the bag, folks. Do not be ignorant. Do not live with your head in the sand and your you-know-what in the air. There's been a bunch of questions come in here. I want you to catch some of these, so it's really good. Couple of them here, and we'll both answer these. Question from Steve. Steve, thanks for asking. And this is probably for both of us. I want to hear your thoughts first. How long will you tolerate the Washington, D.C. narrative before you say enough? And they make a comment that Stitt has been a puppet for D.C. Do you have what it takes to stop the overreach? And you know me, but I want you to answer that question, and I'll answer if you leave anything out.
Well, the short answer is Mark has what it takes. He's already put himself out there many times. He's put his life on the line, literally, for good people in Oklahoma. He put the uniform every day on, not knowing if he would come back, his wife not knowing if he's going to come back, day after day, week after week, year after year. This is a guy who has already put everything on the line for strangers. I can't think of a better, Jesus said that no greater love has a man that he'd be willing to put his life down for another. That's basically what Mark has done, and many good people in uniform have been doing in the United States day after day for a career, for a calling, where they put their life on the line. They were willing to lose it all, to leave a widow and children without a father. That's the potential, and Mark has what it takes. I know him. Nobody's going to buy him off. What the good things that you have seen out of DeSantis in Florida, you're going to see even better things out of Mark Sherwood.
Well, I mean, I appreciate again your thoughts and look, my heart is, ladies and gentlemen, and Richard's right. For whatever reason, God called us to step up in this matter, and it's part of, I guess it's part of our DNA, how we're wired. We've always stepped up for those people that couldn't defend themselves, even to the sake of our own peril, and we'll do that. Look, and I think no question about it, we do have what it takes to step up against federal overreach. We understand the Constitution. We'll surround ourselves in our cabinet with people that really get that, and we will push back, not just as an administration. Hear me. We will push back as the people of Oklahoma. We, the people's voice, will rise up and resound so loud that we'll gain freedom from tyranny. Freedom is when the government fears the people. Tyranny is when the people fear the government. We will not fear the government one bit. Here's one for us both. You can answer this one. I think this is pretty clear. Is the COVID-19 shot okay for children?
I guess you didn't hear me. So let me tell you what I do know. I was in the federal courtroom in Fort Worth, Texas, when the federal judge, Mark Pittman, told the FDA, no, you got to release the Pfizer data. You can't hide that from the American people for 75 years. First of all, if they want to hide the facts for 75 years from you, do you think that that's transparency? Do you think that that's, maybe there's something to hide? Maybe something not good? And so when we got 1/40th of that information, Mark, it had a list made by Pfizer about their shot. Pfizer made the list. No one else made the list. This is a list that Pfizer made of potential bad outcomes for this shot for humans. On the list, it had heart attack, stroke. It had, everybody's heard now about myocarditis in young people dying, people getting inflammation of their heart muscle, something we've never seen in kids before because of the shots. It's on the list. But in the middle of that list, write this down. Go to the American Cancer Society website and do a search on their little magnifying glass, hit the search thing and type in Kaposi sarcoma with a K. It says during an epidemic, which we're in a pandemic, it's an AIDS-defining illness. And AIDS, it causes AIDS cancer. You don't get AIDS cancer if you don't have AIDS. Are you listening? Are you listening? Write down Kaposi sarcoma, and then you won't have a question in your mind. And then if you're thinking, well, maybe I'll take the Moderna shot that Bill Gates is involved in, who, by the way, Bill Gates is not a doctor, a nurse, a chiropractor, a pharmacist. He's not a phlebotomist. He's nothing like that. He's not a scientist. He has no qualifications. If we had to search the whole world for the least qualified person to be involved in this, he'd be the guy, in my opinion. And so that's just my opinion. I'm giving you my opinion. And let me tell you what happened. In the Moderna shot, it has SM102, SM102. If you go to the Cayman Chemical Company OSHA paper, it says not for human or veterinary use, for research use only. You're going to let something be shot in your child that's for research purposes only, that's not for human use, not for veterinary use? Hey, if you did research on a lab rat, that's veterinary use. If this is not allowed for using on a lab rat, I'm not going to put it in my kid. Why would you do that? And so I think that probably tells you a little bit about why this may not be the best plan. Or you can go to the CDC website and look at their own numbers. At the VAERS website, 28,000 deaths from people attributed to the shot.
Yeah. And
so why would you take that chance, especially since the virus has gotten weaker? COVID is over. Did you know if you go to Ontario.ca, Ontario, Canada, they're more transparent, and they show that most of the people in the ICU with the diagnosis of COVID right now have received the maximum number of shots?
Yes.
And did you know that the people that are unvaccinated don't even come close to the numbers of people that are in the ICU, one step away from death with a diagnosis of COVID? What does that tell you? Number one, it tells you it didn't keep them out of the hospital even though they were boosted. Number two, is it a risk factor? Is it doing something that is making them get sicker? You'll have to figure that out. But I told you about Kaposi's sarcoma.
Yeah, that's
Next question.
here's one that a lot of people ask. You work in an ER. You're an ER doc. A lot of people have heard the stories about how hospitals are being reimbursed for things such as ventilators. In other words, when a person gets put on a ventilator, a hospital receives X number of dollars. People have heard reports from $20,000 to $39,000. Do you have any knowledge of that? True or not, if you know?
So, Mark, we've all heard those reports, and I'm going to say never before. Everything got changed. January 1, 2020, the American healthcare system got hijacked. And we saw a bunch of people that I'd never known of before in lab coats act like they're going to take over and tell us what to do, and used a broad brush and said a lot of strategies that were foreign to us. Let me say foreign. These were not foreign to China, to the CCP, but the idea of lockdowns, of healthy people, of quarantining healthy people, of bankrupting small businesses, of wearing masks outside for a respiratory virus, that came out of China, is foreign to us. And without any science to back it up, by the way, they still haven't shown the science. There's a doctor, Jim Meehan in Tulsa, a genius. He put together a paper with over 200 science papers about masks not being effective against influenza and other highly contagious respiratory viruses. That case was solved. That problem was solved. But I also presented a strategy for early treatment. And if you still go to the Mayo Clinic, as of yesterday, they don't tell you any early treatment strategies 2.5 years later, even though Oxford proved that budesonide would prevent 90% of hospitalizations, ER visits, and urgent care visits. So I'm just saying we need new leadership. Mark Sherwood.
Yeah, you're right. When I was looking at a lot of these questions here, a lot of people are very frustrated with the lack of leadership, not just in this state, but around the country. It's interesting, people's opinions are being elicited because they're waking up through broadcasts such as this. From your perspective, and I want to kind of make this the final question, and then folks, share this video. Please share this. You've had 3 videos inserted here with comments that are telling you what's happening. Please share this video and keep your comments coming, because people need to hear this information. You could save someone's life right now. You could save someone's children's life right now. Please share this video. You traveled around the country like I have. That's how we met, kind of doing the Reawaken America tours and other things. That's how we became friends. Richard, what are you seeing regarding people's acumen regarding waking up to this and beginning to say, no more? Are you seeing that swell, get bigger, or are you seeing people still, let's call it brain dead?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a whole lot of overlap between Oklahoma and Texas. I mean, there's lots of family back and forth and a lot of good common sense in Oklahoma and Texas. And so I can say in Oklahoma and Texas, a lot of people are saying, wait a minute. People who have received multiple shots that are nurses that I work with, what opened their eyes, what made them have a light bulb go off was when they wanted 75 years to hide the information from doctors and nurses and respiratory therapists and good American citizens. That offended them after they had received all the shots. And monkeypox is what the federal government has bought millions of doses of monkeypox pokes for the monkeypox. Monkeypox for the monkeypox. They've got monkey shots that have no long-term disability, no long-term safety data. No long-term safety data for the monkeypox vaccine that they're about to roll out. And watch, we've already been there where they said, you do this because, well, first they'll say it'll protect you 90% of the time. Later, they're going to say, well, it's for other people because we see that it doesn't work. That might happen. We saw this with COVID where they said 90% success rate at protecting you with the COVID shot is what they said at first, with one shot, which was a lie. And then they said, well, you need another shot. And then you need another shot. No, you need 4 shots. But they also said it doesn't work anymore, but you're doing it because it might protect other people. And then later they said you might not get so sick. And then people were dying from it after they'd gotten all the shots. And now most of the people in the ICU and in the hospital in Ontario, Canada, if people go to the website, are fully vaxxed and boosted. The most shots, most of the people in the hospital had the most shots. And the less shots you get, the less likely you're in the ICU or in the hospital in Ontario, Canada. Mark, they're going to do the same thing over and over again. They've already said they were trying to push mask mandates on the CDC. They've already moved the CDC travel ban to level 2. The next thing is level 3, where you can't travel.
Yep.
We've seen this before with COVID. Alert, alert, everybody be alert. We've already seen this. Don't jump when they say jump. Don't roll up your sleeve just because they say roll up your sleeve. If you hear that still small voice saying, this doesn't feel right. I've already seen bad things happen when someone gets a medicine or a shot that has no long-term safety data, that's expensive, that's experimental, that has been sold by the millions of doses to the federal government like that. How does that happen before it even happens? We had 1 case of monkeypox in Massachusetts, and they ordered millions of doses of monkeypox vaccines for the American people. They're not just going to hold that. They're going to want you to roll up your sleeve. Are you willing to do that with no long-term safety data? Have you learned anything from COVID? Have you learned anything from the 28,000 plus deaths at the CDC website? Mark, in the 70s, they had a experimental vaccine with no long-term safety data, and people started dying. Only 53 people died, and they pulled the vaccine because 53 Americans dying was too many back in the 70s. Yeah. 28,000 plus people have died, and that's not enough. It's not because we've never given this many shots before. I'm an ER doctor. We give tetanus shots every 10 years. That's a vaccine. But we don't have the death rate. We don't have the body count with the tetanus vaccine that we have with the COVID shot. That's a body count. Yeah. And what are we going to get with monkeypox vaccine? We don't know because we have no long-term safety data. Are you going to cut in line? Are you going to cut in line for an experimental shot that has no long-term safety data for monkeypox when they try to force it? I'm just saying we need new leadership. We need things based on science when it's science related. We need good medicine. We need leaders that are engaged, that aren't out entertaining themselves, shooting helpless bears when there are Oklahoma citizens dying, mourning their loved ones dying, worried about their loved ones in the hospital dying. When their leader, their fearless leader, is out shooting bears, that should never happen again. With Mark Sherwood, that will not happen.
Yeah, I can echo that. That won't. This breaks my heart. I look at all the people in Oklahoma that lost their lives and lost their jobs over the last couple of years. Unacceptable. One is one too many. And that's how I feel about that. Richard, as we get ready to sign off, and I've got a few concluding remarks, 30 seconds for the good of everyone here. What do you got?
We need real leaders, and God does raise up leaders. Mark Sherwood is a leader. God raises up leaders. We are one nation under God. He's brought us through hard times before. He just brought us through the COVID pandemic. They don't want you to know it's over, but it's over. People are getting COVID, but look, they're not dying of COVID unless they've gotten the maximum shots. If you'll look in Ontario, Canada, at their numbers. So don't get any, I'm just saying, think about it and don't repeat this again. But we're not helpless. We're not hopeless. We never were. This is the land of the free, the home of the brave, where God does raise up leaders, where God can use a man or a woman who fears God and loves other people to stand in the gap. And that's what we need. We need that on the school boards. We need that in the city councils. We need that in the governor's seat. And Mark Sherwood, you have my full endorsement. You have my total confidence that you will do the right thing by the people as best you can. So help you God. I'm convinced.
And I will. Richard, how do people reach you? What's your website?
Well, if they go to budesonideworks.com, that's a third-party website. Budesonide is BUDESONIDE works.com, and there's hours of useful information there. And so if they need information, I consider myself a messenger, but the message is what's important. And there's hours of useful information there, real science. You can click on links there. You can see real stories. And I think there's even coaches that'll help you navigate this if you have a loved one in the hospital. There will be information there probably about the future pandemics and what to do. And so we're not helpless, we're not hopeless is my parting shot.
Well, I want to encourage our monitors to go ahead and put on the feed budesonideworks.com and make sure that people have that. Richard, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart for, number one, being my friend, number two, for standing up for truth and righteousness and representing hope, because you, like me, we're hope dealers. And so I thank you for that. Thanks for taking your time this evening to be on.
Thank you, Mark.
Well, folks, as we wrap this thing up, without question, no doubt, 1,000%, my wife and I are stepping up and standing in the gap for people. We're here for you. We are not here for ourselves. Politicians don't know how to interpositionally lead. They don't know how to stand in the gap for anybody because they only stand in the gap for themselves. Our current leadership in Oklahoma is both pathetic and apathetic. We all know it. We all got to step up and do something about it. Why do we have a stock of COVID-19 shots being ordered already and shipped to Oklahoma for your children that are under 5? It's because they didn't listen to anything this man said. Did you hear tonight what was said regarding our state of Oklahoma? This man was ignored, and that's the best I can tell you, which I find is both appalling and unacceptable. We won't do that. Don't know how to do that. It doesn't even make sense. It seems so ridiculous. Why would anybody do it? Folks, I want to encourage you to get out and vote on June 28th. You need to get out and vote and become a part of a solution instead of remaining part of the problem. Extreme times require extreme action. Perilous times require, many times, putting yourself in peril, and we'll do that. When I was on the SWAT team, many times, and I don't know if Richard knows this or not, I would grab that shield, and I was the first person in that door because that was my assignment. And I didn't trade that assignment off to anybody. It was my assignment. I did the assignment because that was my charge and that was my duty. I thought many times, well, what if a bullet gets through that shield? I might die. And I thought many times going in, if that happens, I sure hope it doesn't hurt. And that was my true thought. But at the same time, it didn't stop me from going in the door first because it had to be done. This has to be done. That's why we're stepping up to become your next governor, because it has to be done. And we're going to do it with that mindset. We're going to go in there to prevent lives being lost in Oklahoma to nonsensical leadership, people that are afraid to push back to federal overreach. And we'll see Oklahoma become a shining light for the whole world to see. We'll lift up this idea of freedom a little bit higher than any other state. And that's going to cause Texas to elevate. And Richard will be happy about that. That's going to cause Florida to elevate. And that's going to cause other states to elevate as well. And before you know it, we'll have a group of free states. Will we get them all? Don't think so. But nonetheless, when we have a few people that are willing to stand up and make a big difference, we make a big impact. Hence, we have the key right there to retaining, probably regaining our republic. So with that said, I just encourage you to this last push. We have a couple things coming up. Many of you will hear about it, a big sign rallies, I believe, tomorrow and Tuesday. Just look at our app, pay attention to the notifications on the app, get involved, and let's bombard the state of Oklahoma with these signs, put them out, spread the word, share this video. Share it, share it, share it, because you got to have this. We need this, folks. You've been affected by COVID. You've been affected by tyranny. You need to get involved. So with that said, from my wife and I, we want to wish you again, you fathers out there, happy Father's Day. We love you very much. And I'll conclude with this for the men that I said earlier. Man up, men. Fathers, man up. Rise up now and let your voice be heard. Lead the way you're destined to do. On behalf of my wife and I, we love you very much once again. We wish you the best. Godspeed to all of you. And God bless these United States of America. Good night.
We have up is down, left is right, bad is good, confusion. And God is not the author.
God wants to bless America, but it starts with his people first, repenting and the ending of sin.
We have been in ministry the last 20 years. It was in prayer that the Lord began to convict me to run for office. And so I'm excited about Dr. Sherwood stepping up to the plate.
This is a man after God's own heart, who will not compromise with the devil.
He's bold, he's courageous.
I'm Nick Vujicic.
Warren Hamilton.
I'm Jake Merrick.
And I endorse
enthusiastically
Dr. Mark Sherwood
as governor of Oklahoma.
The ending of slavery happened with total abolishing of. We see this as well for abortion. It's America's Holocaust.
We still have abortions in Oklahoma. How can you be pro-life and have one abortion? Why not stop it right, commitment right now that I'm going to do everything I can to completely abolish abortion in the state of Oklahoma within the first 30 days of office.
Vaccine mandates that are being rolled out now entirely unconstitutional and unbiblical. Every state that's a member of these states that's a member of our union said we'll abide by the Constitution. That's don't tinker with it too much.
So the word mandate doesn't equate to law. I am a big believer in the 10th Amendment, and that means state sovereignty. I would propose that every single business owner in Oklahoma that's affected by that ridiculous mandate push back and say no, because they don't own you. The federal government does not own you. We need to own that amendment, understand what it is, and not be afraid to push back.
We have to understand where critical race theory came from. Obviously, it comes from the Marxist handbook. And if we preach this and promote this, we end up a Marxist nation. It is not social justice. It is not anti-racism. It's actually racism in its purest form. The very thing Martin Luther King Jr. talked about, we're not going to allow this to be taught where we judge by the color of our skin.
There's one race. It's called the human race. I'm not going to apologize for being white. I'm not even white. I don't even know what I am. Kids in school need to be taught how to live life. Right now, we're teaching them theories about how to hate. That's not education, that's brainwashing. We will not do that under my administration. We will fine every school that does that, and if they don't like it, they can take their education and find another state that will accept that nonsense. People all need to be healed. Our state needs to be healed, our land needs to be healed, the economy needs to be healed, and our confidence needs to be healed. Our hope needs to be restored. God has gifted us as healers. We know that we're called to not just heal people individually like we do, but we know now we're called to heal a group of people called the state of Oklahoma. My name is Mark Sherwood, and I'm running for governor of the state of Oklahoma.